Rachel Lawson leaned back in her office chair, reflecting on the past 6 months. It had been an incredible period for her. Her travel agency was thriving, expanding daily, and she had just purchased the 6-story building where her agency was housed. 2 businesses were waiting to move in, and everything seemed to be falling into place. She didn't dwell on the fact that the funds for the building had come from her husband's profitable sale of his business. Meanwhile, David, her husband, lounged at home, relaxing by the pool. After a while, he came inside, where their maid, Lucy, handed him a cold lemonade. He thanked her and went to change. During dinner that night, Rachel said, "David, I think it might be time for you to consider starting a new venture or something productive." David replied, "If there were a promising opportunity, I'd consider it. But right now, I'm enjoying not having to make business decisions or second-guess myself. I'm just savoring the profits from my previous business. If I hadn't received such a generous offer, I'd still be working every day, hoping everything wouldn't collapse. I was fortunate to exit at the right moment, and I'm not sure that luck will strike again." Rachel countered, "You won't know until you try. When you were working, you came home energized and excited about your achievements. Now, you just talk about your swim or what you did on the computer. You need to find something to reignite that spark, the enthusiasm you had for celebrating business successes." David responded, "Maybe someday I'll be ready to dive into another business, but right now, I'm not ready to jump back into the fray. I'll let you know if and when I feel up to it." Rachel insisted, "The longer you wait, the more out of practice you'll become. It's better to get back into the game sooner rather than later." At a loss for words, David quietly finished his meal. After dinner, they relaxed in the living room. That night, as they prepared for bed, Rachel tried to initiate intimacy, but David didn't pick up on her cues. Frustrated, she took charge, stimulating him and taking control. Once they were finished, Rachel said, "Since you didn't pick up on my hints, I had to take charge. Next time, if I need to take control, I might even dress you up. I expect you to act like a man, both in business and in the bedroom." The following morning, Rachel continued to urge David to consider starting a new project. She suggested that any interesting business opportunity would be worth exploring. David listened but remained silent, then spent time online browsing real estate listings for businesses. The only option that stood out was a women's dress shop, which didn't appeal to him. He logged off and played games instead. After lunch, he went for his usual swim. Upon returning, Lucy gave him his regular glass of lemonade. That evening, when Rachel brought up the topic again, David told her he hadn't found anything appealing. While she was pleased he had looked, she was determined to find something for him to do. In frustration, Rachel told him, "I don't usually set deadlines, but I need you to come up with a job idea by tomorrow night. It's bothering me that you're not doing anything productive and just wasting your days. If you don't find something, I'll find it for you. It's time for you to get moving or face serious consequences." David replied, "I need to feel right about a job to succeed. You know that as well as I do. The building we bought was something I was confident about, not something I stumbled into. I'll look tomorrow, but I can't guarantee anything." They spent the rest of the evening in silence. Rachel then spoke with Lucy. Rachel said, "Lucy, you do a great job here, and I'd hate to lose you. But I have an opportunity you might find interesting. Ralph Hawkers, who's retiring, is the cleaner at the office building. The pay is better than what you get here. If you're interested, let me know." Lucy responded, "I'd definitely be interested. Thank you for the offer. Being a maid isn't hard, but it does get lonely with just Mr. Lawson around." Rachel asked, "If you took that job, who would replace you here? Do you know anyone?" Lucy thought for a moment and said, "It's not much work. Mr. Lawson could easily handle it." Rachel considered this and said, "I'll get back to you tomorrow night. Is that all right?" Rachel returned to the living room and glanced at David, imagining him in a maid's uniform. It made her smile. She thought about how to get him into such an outfit. The more she considered it, the more she looked forward to it. She remembered mentioning panties to him and he hadn't objected, which gave her confidence that this might be easier than she anticipated. At bedtime, she reminded him he had until tomorrow to find something. He didn't respond, and secretly, she hoped he wouldn't find anything. The next morning, she didn't bring up the job search. He appreciated the break. As Lucy took his dirty dishes, she gave him a knowing smile. He went about his day as usual, and when he checked for business opportunities, nothing seemed promising. That evening, David told Rachel he was still looking but hadn't found anything. Rachel mentioned that the beauty shop in her building was for sale, but he probably wouldn't be interested in that. He was relieved to hear this. Later, Rachel spoke with Lucy. She said, "You're right. Mr. Lawson could probably handle the cleaning. The challenge is convincing him to do it and explaining your departure in a believable way." Lucy suggested, "I have an idea, but I'm not sure if you'll like it." Rachel replied, "Let's hear it. I'm open to suggestions." Lucy proposed, "What if you caught us kissing? You could fire me and make Mr. Lawson take my place." Rachel grinned, "Lucy, that's perfect. I'll need to get some things to pull it off. Tomorrow's Friday. We need to figure out the timing." Lucy said, "He usually swims in the afternoon and comes in around 2:30. I could intercept him then and give him a kiss. If you're here to catch us, it would work perfectly." Rachel was thrilled with the plan and instructed Lucy to report to Ralph the following Monday. Grinning, she joined David in the living room to read the evening paper, relieved that he was no longer pressuring her about job hunting. The next day, Rachel eagerly went shopping for David's new wardrobe. She bought him panties, bras, and slips, and after some searching, found the perfect pair of 5-inch heels that locked securely onto his feet. She also got chest forms that would enhance his figure and a wig in his hair color, cascading in curly waves down to his mid-back. After finishing her shopping, Rachel almost called Lucy to set up the plan for that day but decided to wait until the following day. When she returned home, she was pleased to have moved everything into Lucy's room without David noticing. At dinner that night, Rachel's happiness was evident, and David wondered what had caused her cheerfulness. Deciding to enjoy the shift in mood, he relaxed. After dinner, Rachel discussed final details with Lucy, brimming with anticipation. The next morning, David and Rachel enjoyed a light-hearted breakfast, and David felt more at ease than he had in a long time. He won 2 computer games in a row and shared smiles with Lucy during lunch. He then went for his afternoon swim, reveling in the perfect water temperature. While David was in the pool, Rachel arrived home and hid in the living room. Lucy, applying lipstick, was ready when David passed by. She grabbed him with surprising strength and kissed him deeply. "What on earth is going on here?" Rachel's voice cut through the moment. "Is this what you two do while I'm at work?" "Lucy, you're fired. Go take off your uniform and leave immediately." As Lucy left, Rachel told David to sit at the table, her gaze piercing. He sat down, blushing under her scrutiny. Rachel asked, "How long has this been happening? What's going on between you two?" David replied, "That was the first time. She grabbed me and kissed me before I could react. I have no idea why it happened. Nothing like this has ever occurred before." Rachel expressed frustration over losing a good maid and said she'd need to find a replacement. David remained seated as she made calls to various places, inquiring about a new maid. Unbeknownst to him, she had called her office 3 times, speaking to only dial tones and answering machines. As she hung up, Lucy passed through, blowing David a kiss as she left. Rachel then said, "Forget trying to find a new maid. I have a better idea. Follow me." David followed her to Lucy's room, where Rachel instructed him to remove his swimsuit. Once he complied, Rachel handed him a pair of lacy panties and said, "Since you're wearing Lucy's lipstick and seemed eager to try her panties, you can put these on." Though he was about to protest, Rachel's determined expression made him comply. He slid the panties on. Rachel continued, "If you're going to wear her panties, you might as well complete the look with her other clothes. This solves two problems, finding a new maid and giving you something to do. It's a perfect solution." He protested, "I can't be a maid. Men aren't maids. This is crazy." Rachel, undeterred by his resistance, continued with her plan. While he stood there in stunned silence, she applied glue to the chest forms and affixed them to his chest. He was stunned as she placed the bra on him, saying, "You need support for your new chests. I'm sure you'll come to appreciate them." The weight of the forms was surprising, and he struggled to think of a way out of the situation. His thoughts were jumbled as Rachel dressed him in a girdle with black stockings, a slip, and the maid's dress. She then positioned the wig on his head, styled the curls, and pinned on a mob cap, which was unfamiliar to him as Lucy had never worn one. Rachel brought over the shoes, saying, "A maid always looks better in heels. These will be just right for you." She slipped the shoes onto his feet and secured them. She instructed him to walk, and although he wobbled significantly, she couldn't help but smile at how well her plan was working. The discomfort and shock were gradually fading, but his head was still spinning, making it hard for him to form a coherent plan to escape this predicament. After about half an hour of struggling, Rachel suggested he walk by placing one foot in front of the other. This advice made it easier, and she beamed as she watched his awkward swaying. Rachel then instructed him to prepare lemonade, explaining the proper way to serve it. He followed her directions and attempted a curtsy, nearly losing his balance. After 10 minutes of practice, his legs were sore, and Rachel finally let him stop. She then asked him to clean the living room while she went into town. He started cleaning with the carpet cleaner and, once finished, took a break in the recliner, finally feeling some relief. When Rachel returned, he was arranging the pillows on the couch. Rachel informed him it was lunchtime and requested soup and a sandwich. He prepared the meal and set it on the table. As she began eating, he sat in his usual spot and started his own meal. Rachel remarked, "What do you think you're doing sitting there? That's where my husband sits, not my maid. My maid eats after I'm finished and takes care of my needs while I eat. You need to get this right." He continued eating as if he hadn't heard her. After she finished her meal, she said, "I'll let it slide this time, but you need to follow my instructions in the future." Once she left, he hoped to rest his feet, but was soon instructed to hand-wash the dishes. After completing the task, Rachel allowed him to go swimming, but not without a new swimsuit she had purchased. She handed him a bag and unlocked his shoes. Excited for a swim, he went to his room to change. However, when he pulled out the swimsuit, he was shocked to find a red bikini adorned with yellow flowers and bright green leaves. With resignation, he put it on, readying himself for the pool. He swam in the pool for nearly an hour before relaxing in a lounge chair, savoring the relief of being out of the restrictive shoes. An hour later, Rachel called for another glass of lemonade. He brought it to her, and she instructed him to put on his uniform. When he removed the swimsuit, he was taken aback by the clear outline it left on his tanned skin. He donned his maid's outfit and sat on the edge of the bed, waiting for Rachel to call him. He went downstairs, where Rachel asked for another glass of lemonade and scolded him for not curtsying properly when he left her presence and served her. She directed him to start preparing supper, which he did. During dinner, Rachel had him refill her water glass twice. She noted that his curtsies were improving and that he was managing the shoes better. After she finished eating, he had his own meal, cleaned up, and put the dishes in the dishwasher. Sitting on a stool at the kitchen counter, he mulled over the situation, feeling increasingly discontented and unsure of how to address it with Rachel. Finally, he approached her and said, "I don't understand why you're doing this, but it has to stop. I'm not a maid, and I won't accept being treated like one. We are husband and wife, not mistress and maid. Let's be reasonable and return to the way things were." Rachel responded, "You don't seem to grasp the situation. I need a maid, and you're available. You'll remain my maid until I decide otherwise. Once you accept this reality, you'll be much better off. I expect you to be the best maid possible. Do you understand? He replied, yes, but you've completely changed our relationship. Do you realize the impact of what you're doing and the potential consequences? Rachel said, I know exactly what I'm doing. It's for a good reason, and that's the end of the discussion. Knowing it was pointless to argue further, he left her to contemplate his next steps. At bedtime, Rachel unlocked his shoes, and he fell asleep almost immediately. Sunday passed similarly to Saturday, with the exception that he went straight into the house after his swim. He spent the day reflecting on their relationship and the drastic changes. On Monday morning, after Rachel had breakfast and instructed him to clean the bathrooms thoroughly, he enjoyed a hot cup of coffee and made some life-altering decisions. He picked up the phone and called an attorney. Within 30 minutes, he was at Jack Grissom's office. Jack, a lawyer David had known for years, listened as David recounted the situation. It became clear to David that he had been set up, as Lucy wouldn't have had chest forms or such high heels. Jack agreed to start divorce proceedings and asked about their assets. David mentioned the office building jointly owned and the house in his name, along with about $15,000 in savings. He provided Jack with as much information as he could about Rachel's business. After leaving Jack's office, David visited Northern Realty, the agency that handled the building purchase. The owner agreed to list David's share for sale and mentioned a few potential investors. David also had the realty company list his house, and they promised to send someone for an analysis that afternoon. Shortly after noon, Rachel saw someone photographing the building from her window. When she went outside, she learned it was for Northern Realty, indicating that half of the building was up for sale. Realizing it was David's doing, she headed straight home. When Rachel arrived home, she noticed two unfamiliar cars in the driveway. Entering the house, she nearly collided with a man taking photographs. She asked him what was happening, and he explained they were photographing for the realty company. Rachel didn't see David anywhere. David eventually emerged from the basement with another man. Before Rachel could question him, the doorbell rang. When David didn't move to answer it, she went to open the door and found two men standing outside. They asked if she was Rachel Lawson, and upon her confirmation, they handed her some papers to sign. After she signed, she opened the first document and was shocked to discover it was a divorce notice. The second set of papers was a restraining order prohibiting her from contacting David. Stunned and upset, she decided to confront him. Finding David, she demanded, "What's going on? We need to talk." David replied, "I tried to discuss things with you last night, but you insisted you understood all the consequences. So, you should leave now. I don't want to involve the police, but I will if necessary. You set me up and took advantage of me. I'm reclaiming my independence. You'd better get your papers in order for your attorney, as I'm sure they'll want a financial statement from your travel agency." Feeling devastated, Rachel left. Once she parked her car in her reserved spot, the gravity of the situation hit her, and she cried for over half an hour. She questioned what she had done to deserve this and lamented the loss of the man who had loved her. Realizing she had ruined that love, she decided to find a lawyer to see if she could make amends. 1 year later, David owned a successful Western-themed eatery, had a beautiful house, and was financially secure. He was dating someone seriously but wasn't ready to marry. Rachel still ran her travel agency, had sold her share of the building, and was engaged to a man she vowed would never wear a dress.